Hey, I'm Finlay Sweetman. I'm currently studying at Flinders University to be a physiotherapist or a health professional of a similar service. Today I want to discuss the Australian health system and the responsibilities and components that the system requires to function. This will be a position statement based on my opinions and thoughts learned and developed across the semester of learning completed in the course Health 1306 Contemporary Health Issues in Australia. Before I begin, I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. I live in the Victor Harbor Fleurieu Peninsula area and am recording this video from Middleton, so I recognise and pay my respects to the Ngarrindjeri people, the traditional custodians of this land which I am on today. I acknowledge their ongoing connections to the lands, waters, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. And I would also like to pay my respect to all elders past, present, and into the future. The position I want to discuss now will be my second position statement, after all the learning from the course has been completed. At the start of the course, I completed an early position statement on my views of whose responsibility it was for the health of the Australian population. My position and argument were that it is the responsibility of both the individual and the health system, or government. To back this position up, my argument was that individuals have a large responsibility for their health beyond what the health system can control, for example, in their lifestyle choices or diet. As well as this, the individual must make the choice to seek health assistance when they think they require it. When an individual does make the decision to seek help, then the health system or government becomes responsible to assist to the highest possible level. Basically, the resources should be in place by the health system and government so that the individual can be assisted when required. After development and reflection, my position has not necessarily changed from this perspective, but rather deepened in meaning with components added. As a future health professional, the first and most important part to me is the true understanding of health and illness. Health within each different culture and country around the world can be viewed uniquely due to health being an independent social structure. This means that within Australian culture and lifestyle there is a unique Australian model of health which has been constructed over the years. Although health is independent to an individual group, it does have an exact meaning, however. The World Health Organization defines it as health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. This understanding that health is much more than just physical well-being and a lack of illness was previously unknown to me, but after consideration I've gained this greater view of health, which takes into account more determining factors and is something I can see heavily reflected in Australia's health system. A direct example of where the Australian government promotes this view of health is in their policies. Reflected across the 14 health policies, last updated in 2018, is a malleable health system which revolves around the different aspects important to health, as well as providing opportunities for people who need individualised care dependent on determining factors or situational outcomes. These policies cover physical, mental, and social care, and combining these aspects, the policies create a dynamic health system. This dynamic system is flexible and forever changing, allowing for equitable treatment for all across Australia, including during tough times such as the COVID-19 pandemic. All these policies and organisations which help to make up this whole model of health in Australia are also driven by the rights of the citizens, such as the right to health as stated by the government. The right to health is the right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. So after all of this learning and analysis, I can really see what health means in Australia and why Australia has one of the leading healthcare systems in the world. As represented in the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare Statistics in 2018, the life expectancy from birth for both females and males has been increasing year by year and is well above the average life expectancy around the world. Despite this, Australia is only slightly above the average expenditure on healthcare and has had better health outcomes than countries spending more than Australia, such as the USA. Beyond these discussions around what makes up health as a system, the more relevant component that directly impacts my profession is the treatment or acknowledgement of disease and illness. The biomedical model is used to treat patients based on a physical or biological diagnosis. This process is essential to many health professions as it outlines a clear path for treatment. However, not all diseases, illnesses, and health matters can be dealt with using this model. Despite this, it is essential to my desired practice as a physio. Illness comes into play here, and illness is commonly thought of as suffering, but my understanding of that has changed quite a bit throughout this course, as I now recognise it as simply being diagnosed with something, and we shouldn't assume that the person is suffering, but rather recognise the issue or illness for what it is. Yes, on top of this understanding, or on top of my initial understanding, I've discussed some of the defining factors of health practice in Australia. But none of this has combated my initial point of who is responsible for the individual's health. I still see it as a joint responsibility of the individual and the health system. There are rights and policies in place that make it a requirement for there to be equitable healthcare available, but it's the individual who must seek, cooperate, and take into account all the healthcare advice in order to receive what they're entitled to. So all in all, my position hasn't changed, just my understanding has deepened. And it's through the various discussions and presentations of information within the tutorials and lectures that I have been able to recognise this position. Through the realisations, such as comparisons to other countries, I can see why it is the responsibility of the Australian government to give equitable care, which is lacking in many other countries. On top of this, healthcare availability itself and the discussion around appropriate and adequate care, which was done in the later tutorials, also makes me realise that there is a large responsibility from the health system to provide care that will actually function in the real world. But yeah, ultimately the effectiveness of the whole system and the government implements comes back onto the individual and their compliance in relation to the health advice and health seeking. As already mentioned, I'm at university to become a physio or a similar health professional, and everything I've just discussed from my position on responsibilities to the biomedical model and adequate healthcare will all come into play in my practice, as I will have to use these models and policies, resulting in me helping my patients and clients to the best of my ability, as this is what they deserve and are entitled to. Since they have done their part in taking the responsibility to seek the health assistance, that's what I must do. Thanks for watching. I hope this discussion on my position on healthcare and health responsibilities in Australia was informative and provided the key information around the importance of a shared responsibility to creating the best health outcomes for the Australian population.